How you doing, everyone? Welcome back to Comic Culture. This is Nick. We're going to do another key comic flip through. This time we're going to go over Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Year 1, Part 1 of Batman. Now, over on DC Fandom, they call this Year 1 is the Batman storyline written by Frank Miller and Dave. It was produced in 1987 through the Batman main series as a new origin story for the character. This is one of the many post-Crisis reboots established in the DCU history following Crisis on Infinite Earths, but it is considered to be the first canon Batman story in New Earth continuities. So that's what's listed over at dcfandom.com. Really cool book. I wanted to get into this one because I have never read this one before. It's been sitting on my shelf. I have Year 1, 2, and 3, I believe, and I just wanted to get into this because I'm on this Frank Miller kick right now, and it's a story I haven't read. Big Batman fan. Let's bust into it right now. So if you've watched the newest Batman movie, they take a lot of things from this comic, which is very appropriate considering this is our Year 1 and that movie focused on our Year 1 Batman as well. But let's look over this book real quick, see what kind of things happen in here. Let's admire the art, the storytelling, and let's get into this book. First off, great opening scene right here. We have this shadow of a bat coming in here. He will become the greatest crime fighter the world has ever known. It won't be easy. So this is obviously setting up a struggle, a origin story of sorts. Trying to figure out who I am, how I come to be. So again, this is that early stages. He doesn't know, Bruce Wayne doesn't know he wants to be Batman yet. He knows he wants to make a difference. His parents were murdered. He's been abroad for 18, 20 years, something like that, training, honing his skills. And this is his return back to Gotham City. This is a little foreshadowing. We're going to touch on this a little bit later in the story. But the B plot in here is a Commissioner Gordon story. He's actually jumping onto the police force and he's traveling. He's got a pregnant wife right now. He's worried about her. He wants to do the right thing. He had some trouble in another city that he was in involving some other cops. And so he's actually being transferred over into Gotham. So we have this side-by-side storytelling going on right here, where Jim is actually coming in via train on January 4th, and he's talking about Gotham City right here, the buildings and whatnot. And then we have Bruce Wayne. We don't know it's Bruce Wayne until the second panel, but he's traveling back into town via plane, and they're talking about the different perspective that you have when you travel into Gotham, being right there on the street, and then being overhead looking down at all the snowy-topped buildings and things like that. So obviously a different perspective depending on which mode you're entering Gotham in. When Jim arrives at the station, he's immediately met by Detective Flass, and so he's kind of giving him the lay of the land right near. Commissioner Loeb sent him to pick up Jim to make sure he's going to get to where he needs to get, and this guy has some like creepy vibes right away, pushing away this guy, trying to peddle some stuff over on Jim, putting his hand on his shoulder, obviously using his size as like an intimidation factor in a way, and he's already dropping lines of like cop corruption that's going on right now, and so James Gordon is immediately recognizing this as a kind of like a threat, or I don't want to be here. What am I doing here? I'm doing this for my family kind of thing. And then we have Bruce Wayne coming back in town. There's some reporters in here. This is a common thing that Frank Miller does. He puts like these news anchor panels on here. So this is obviously like a TV screen that we used to have back in the day that we don't have anymore, but it's giving you a sense of reporters and what their perspective is. And there's all these rumors like, where did he go? Who's this? Do you have any new girlfriends? Anything like that? What's going on? And so we had this opening panel where we had both of our folks. We had Jim Gordon and we had Bruce Wayne coming back to Gotham, but their welcome party is obviously different. So that was kind of cool. And again, that follows through over here. We have Commissioner Loeb meeting with Jim for the first time. This guy is obviously like a clown. He's sitting here putting down some Nicorette gum constantly. His office has got all this like cartoony stuff all over the place. He's got a clown directly behind him. So a little bit of satire being shown there. Some other little knickknacks. We have some Charlie Brown stuff in here as well. So this guy is not to be taken too seriously. That's the kind of perception I'm getting from him. And then of course we have Bruce Wayne showing up at the Wayne Manor, being greeted by Alfred, and he's got some dialogue about Wayne Manor being this fortress for generations and things like that. And so he's actually glad to be home in this scene. And so we're getting a little bit of, again, that side-by-side storytelling right there with our two different characters and the difference between their welcome parties. So I thought that was pretty cool. And of course, we have Flass over here taking Jim down the road, again, kind of laying into him about how the fact that being a cop in Gotham is actually a pretty sweet deal, again, because of all the corruption and things like that. So he's planting the seeds early into Jim saying, if you play ball, this relationship is going to be great and you're going to be doing just fine in the city. And hey, you got a pregnant wife at home. You might want to play ball with us. And so he does kind of throw his weight around in front of Jim over here, stopping over at the street corner, taking on some of these thugs right here. Obviously, people he's had previous engagements with, and maybe they have some kind of a deal going on, and he roughs them up. And all Jim can think about right here is, hey, this guy is huge, he's strong, he's had training, he's a Green Beret, but I've had military training as well. I know how to handle guys like that. So I'm just going to take note of his fighting style, and I'm going to, kind of bank that for later. So again, it's a little bit more foreshadowing right there. So kind of passive aggressively intimidating Jim Gordon and then throwing his weight around in front of him too, just to kind of reinforce the fact that he's somebody you do not want to mess with. Of course, when he gets back into the car, he sees, hey, see, this was totally justified. He had this knife on him and it turns out it was just a comb. So I thought that was pretty funny. But the other heartbreaking thing in this scene is the fact that Jim keeps saying that he's hoping that the tests come back negative for his wife being pregnant, I would assume. And so he's like, I pray they're negative or something like that. That's my assumption there, but I have to keep reading to figure out that full thread. And then again, we have some more dialogue here about how, if you play ball, you're going to do just fine as a cop over here in Gotham. And Jim's kind of laying it down, you can call me Lieutenant instead of Jimmy, just something, showing a little bit of respect, kind of throwing his weight back at him as well. And of course, we're going to flip back over to Bruce Wayne. He's back over on mansion grounds, just continuing his training that he picked up overseas, chopping some bricks, kicking down trees and stuff. That's pretty amazing. I can't believe that. But we're going to go ahead and flash over into Flask again, talking to the commissioner, just saying, listen, Jim's not working out, man. We got to rough him up. We got to do something. We got to soften him up because he's never going to play ball. He's not going to play ball like the rest of us do. And this dude's going to cause trouble. And the commissioner basically says, you know what? Don't do it while I'm in town. Do it when I'm away. So, I won't be in so much trouble. There won't be so much heat. And we can handle it that way. So that's kind of the deal that they set up right here. Of course, the guys are itching to do that. We have a flash forward into March 11th. Again, we have this A and B story going on right here, which is cool. We have Bruce Wayne essentially going out and trying to, go into the Badlands, right? Just trying to figure out what kind of corruption is out there, see if he can get a taste of what's actually happening out there in the streets. And so he does park far away from this bad, rough area. He actually puts some makeup on, things like that, things that would make him not identifiable as Bruce Wayne. He sets up some alibis, things like that. In the meantime, Jim is actually, going to work, getting off of work, and these guys approach him in a parking garage with baseball bats and whatnot, and they're going to rough Jim up because he's just not playing ball. And of course, Jim, with some training, some military training and whatnot, does get the early upper hand. He anticipates some of the moves and things like that, but we have so many different guys with bats and whatnot. They eventually take control of the situation and rough up Jim pretty good. Not enough to send him into the hospital, and we're going to touch on that in here in just a little bit, but he does recognize one of the voices of the guys beating him up right now is actually Flask, and so he's going to remember that obviously here in the next couple of pages. Now, some of these scenes here are very reminiscent of the movie that we saw most recently. We have Selina Kyle coming into the mix as well. She's kind of a working girl or something like that in this area, and she's peering out the window. She's apparently with a client right now, but she's overlooking this really rough part of town, which Bruce Wayne is walking through right now, a disguised Bruce Wayne, and he's actually approached by this very young girl who's working for this man, obviously turning tricks apparently, and he turns the little girl down obviously, but the pimp here essentially starts getting into an argument with the girl, and you got to pick your targets, girl. You can't go after a guy like this. He actually has, he has standards, and you're not his type and things like that. And so basically we have Bruce Wayne stepping up to this guy, and they end up getting in some kind of a fight while Selina is overlooking this whole entire situation. This whole scene right here kind of puts a knot in your stomach a little way because of just the themes around it and like the little girl involved and whatnot and just how she's being treated and everything. And then Selina, she's kind of protecting her own people in a way. This is very reminiscent of like Old Town in Sin City. We have all these girls kind of sticking together, and she sees this, potential client and this other pimp guy kind of roughing up, causing a scene. And so she actually jumps down into the action as well to kind of save some of her own, right? And so we get the little continuation of the fight right here. The little girl even gets involved too and gets a few hits in on Bruce Wayne, and then eventually Selina comes down in there and starts fighting, and he actually says to himself she's had karate training, but only karate, and then he obviously knows how to counter a lot of different fighting styles. But what I really like about this scene right here is there's a cool breakdown and some really nice pacing in the artwork and the paneling. It's like you see your fights over here, you get this sneak attack, great perspective because it's down low, because we have this high shot and we have this low shot right here. Then we zoom out real quick to get the final scene, and we get this amazing shot of Selena kind of perched like a cat on the windowsill right here, leaping into action. When she lands, he says, another one joins, essentially hissing like a cat. So it's kind of cool to set up that whole thing. And then, of course, the cops come because they have some kind of a ruckus going on downtown. One of them goes ahead and prematurely shoots a shot over at Bruce Wayne, hitting him, nicking an artery, he even says, and he loses consciousness. He ends up waking up in the backseat of the squad car, where he tells the police officers to pull over, I warned you, things like that. He actually ends up breaking the chains and wrestling somehow with the cops to the point where they lose control and crash. And he has enough strength, I don't know how, to get up and pull those police officers away from the wreckage so they don't explode or burn into the fire. And I love this shot right here of the squad car screeching across on its side and smashing into this truck. Just really cool detail over here as well. So that was a really cool scene of him trying to escape right here. And again, he's driving home. He doesn't exactly know how he gets from that point back to his car that he parked at the garage at the beginning of the night. And this whole area over here is basically him saying how foolish he was. He was very sloppy. You know, he's got the talent, but he doesn't really have the process yet. And he has to hone that. But, you know, you got to start somewhere, right? So he's, you know, you can only kick down trees for so long. You have to actually go out and try to make a difference. So that's what we're seeing over in this spot right here. And then again, we're flashing over to Jim Gordon. He's actually somewhat recovered. Again, he talks about that they didn't beat him up enough to go to the hospital, and he doesn't want to go home quite yet, and he has to take care of some business. So he grabs one of those bats that was left behind, and he goes on a stakeout trying to find where these guys were, where Flass went, where those men went as well. And there's a couple scenes here where they actually pass each other, Bruce Wayne and Gordon, on the way to their respective locations, right? We have Bruce Wayne going back home, then we have Jim Gordon going out on the hunt. Of course, Jim finds where the guys are located right now, and he stakes the place out. He's waiting for all the other guys to leave, and he's got some dialogue over here about, you know, each person and their motivation and where they're going from there. So he's on the hunt right now, trying to find Flass, and he actually does. He's the last guy standing in this, leaving this party, and of course, he follows them into this, you know, country part of the city, runs him off the road, actually throws him the bat, puts his gun down, and actually fights him just man to man. And again, he uses all that knowledge he has from his military training and the fact that Flass is a Green Beret, so he knows how to counter maybe some of their techniques, and he witnessed him fight in the previous pages, and so he actually takes him down pretty quickly and strips him of his clothes, throws his guns away, ties him up, and then leaves him out into the woods, knowing that he's going to call the police for backup, and he'll never admit that Jim did this by himself, that he was attacked by like 10 different guys or something like that. And but now Jim has made the message known not to mess with him, and he thinks that this is going to be enough to get him off of his back for a while. So that was a pretty cool scene right here, just showing how formidable Jim could be in this situation, just taking on this big guy. And he's got this Gotham High letter jacket on as well, just to kind of reinforce the kind of person that this guy might be, you know, stereotypically. So that was kind of cool to see all that break down. So we have this interesting part right here where we get to learn a little bit more of our identity. We get to figure out our Batman identity a little bit more. We have Bruce Wayne basically sitting in his father's study right here, still suffering from that gunshot wound. He crashes his car trying to get back into his manor. He's in his father's study. There's like blood marks everywhere, and he's contemplating who he is, and he's reminiscing on the night that his parents were actually murdered, saying to himself in this like writing format, he's almost journaling this, but it's coming across as internal narrative as well. He's been waiting for 18 years to get to a point where he thinks he can make a difference. He's got all this anger, all this regret built up inside of him, and he's just not patient. He's waited so long to make an impact on the city or to do something to unleash this emotion that's inside of him, and he just doesn't know how to do it. He's just being very, very impatient. He doesn't know how to work through that. And of course, we are reliving the moment 18 years ago with Zorro, you know, Mark of Zorro, going through the alleyway and being shot. I love this panel right here because it's that classic black and white feel. There's actually a panel border that goes down the middle right here. So we have a father and mother being shot separately. And then we have this page break, this panel break right here, but it blends into the shadowing of these characters, of this character, Joe Chill. And I think this was handled really well. I liked how my eyes shifted back and forth and was confused for a moment, but then I noticed that and I'm like, that's a cool way of blending that, putting their backs together in that panel. So I really liked the way that was executed. And of course, we get our cover scene right here as well, and with those determined eyes trying to begin this path of vengeance right here. So I thought that was pretty awesome. This page right here was both amazing and a little abrupt, I thought. I think this could have lasted for 2 pages, but I like this scene right here. So we have this continuation of these eyes. Now these eyes, this is a concept that Frank Miller uses a lot in many, many different books. We see it in Daredevil, we see it in Ronin, we see it in other books as well. But you have this close-up shot of the eyes, and this is the little Bruce Wayne, and then bam, we're at our more present day Bruce Wayne here, and we get to see that weathered, older look, of course, right? Now, in the moment where he's contemplating, you know, what is his next steps? What is he going to do? He's asking his father, or the spirit of his father, for assistance. Like, how do I become more patient? What do I do to strike fear into the hearts of these people in my city that are just destroying it? And in that moment, through the window crashes this bat that he both recognizes from when he was a child and that he was afraid of because it was in other areas on the grounds. But he also recognizes it as a potential icon or image to instill fear into his enemies. And this is some internal monologue about this as well. And it says, I shall become a bat. Now he rings this bell right here, a bell that he was hesitant to ring before because Alfred would come and try to save him, but he was so desperate at the time he wanted to figure out the solution to this problem first. Now that he knows what his symbol is going to be, now he's grabbing that bell to get Alfred in there to help get him back into stable condition. So that was really cool. I like the effectiveness of that scene and just the pace of it. I thought that was really handled really well. So that is Batman Year 1, Part 1. I have all the other parts. I'll probably go ahead and do those as well and sprinkle them in among other videos. But I hope you enjoyed that. If you were around when this book was coming out on the shelf, this is Batman 404. If you were around picking this up on the shelf when it was coming out, let me know down below. And what was your impressions going into this book, having come out of other Batman runs and whatnot? What was the vibe? What was the feel? What was the reception of this issue in this series? You know, prior to 404, what was going on before and what was the perception going into this one? How well was it received? Let me know down below because I'm extremely interested. But as always, I appreciate you watching the video. Go down below and hit that like button. Check out the subscribe button and the join button as well. I would really appreciate it. But as always, thank you again for watching. I'll see you all down below in the comments.